And we'll start with incense burning. Thank you.
Incense burning on space is filled with the fragrance of Buddha's scent of fall. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere with utmost sincerity all assembly. We pay homage and offer flowers of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
Excuse me, I'm going to put a cough drop in as a prophylactic to coffee before this starts.
Please state your name.
I'm Brian Silva, by the way. Paniwadi asked me earlier this week to prepare for something for today, and I wasn't sure what to do, so I went through a lot of my books and thought, and ended up on The Way of the Bodhisattva, which the book I worked off of was Pema Chodron's No Time to Lose, A Timely Guide to the Way of the Bodhisattvas. And so Santideva is this person who gave this phenomenal speech. He was born as a prince in, excuse me, about the 8th century India. And as the eldest son, he was ready to get, promoted up to be the head of a certain area. And he says, I'm not ready for that. And he decided to, like the Buddha did, leave home in the middle of the night and become a wanderer. He eventually wandered to a place called Nalanda, which back in about the 4th century, it was one of the most renowned universities in the world, and it was focused on Buddhism in Nalanda. It lasted for about 1,000 years before the invaders came in and destroyed it. But it was a very high-level piece of learning in the world, and this is where Santideva went to study a little bit. He was not well liked, as the story goes, by his students. Not his students, his fellow students. He would sit in his office by himself and do things, and they weren't sure he was really getting into stuff. And so the monks said he had 3 realizations: eating, sleeping, and, well, he says shitting. So they decided to teach him a lesson. And they asked him to give a special talk to the whole university, hoping to embarrass him to the point where his lack of knowledge would come forward and he would start to study. And he came forward and surprised everybody. He came forward and gave this phenomenal talk. And it was the last talk they ever saw of him again, by the way. At the end of this talk, he sort of raises up to the heavens and goes away. So this is about the Bodhisattva way, the way of the Bodhisattva. The Sanskrit name is bodhicitta, is the defining quality of a Bodhisattva. And bodhicitta is, an awakened heart, has the power to lift us out of our self-centeredness and give us a chance to, get rid of dysfunctional habits that we have. And we do this, or they do this, by taking every opportunity they can to try and express this Bodhi heart they have. There's a gentleman, Trungpa Rinpoche, who was in fact Pema Chodron's teacher. He says the essence of the Mahayana, which is where this whole process is centered in, is the Mahayana teaching, is thinking bigger, not thinking of yourself, thinking and helping yourself, but mostly helping others. And it turns out, the story goes, the theory is that by helping others, you will end up helping yourself. And so Santideva, who gave this talk, presents the essence about doing this. And it's a guide to compassionate living and thinking bigger than just yourself. Now, I'm going to talk just about, let's see what else is. Chapter 6 in this teaching. There are, somewhere, there it is, total of 10 different chapters. One chapter Pema doesn't have in this book is called the 9th chapter on wisdom, because it's her view that that is so daunting and so difficult. I'm not going to try to capture this. In fact, her view is only an awakened person should give this talk. So she says, I'm not going to give you the talk. I'm just going to tell you what I think. So I'll now tell you what parts of what she talked about that I think. And we're going to focus on chapter 6, really, on patience. And it wasn't just a little while ago we were having a talk, was it last Wednesday on patience?
Yeah, and forbearance.
And so this says, hey, this fits into here really well with where we're going. So this came to light for me to talk about. So we'll talk about, there were 2 chapters, 2 parts of chapter 6. The first part of chapter 6 is what we're going to talk about. And I've given you each a copy of, most of you, one of you I think is going to have to share. And I'm going to ask you to help me, because we're going to read a stanza, then I'll read the stanza, and then I'll read what she has given us the vision, the wisdom about that stanza that we're going to read. So everybody has we're going to go to number 16, number 3.16, which is like on the second page. It says patience on the top of it or something like that. Do you all see that? 6.13.
Okay.
Got
Page
it?
3, page 3. 3 categories of patience.
Okay,
Patience that comes from reframing our attitude towards discomfort.
right. So the first one is, reframing the attitude toward discomfort. And since we started, would you please read the first stanza?
The Karna folk, devoted to the goddess, endure the meaningless austerities of being cut and burned. Why am I so timid on the path of freedom?
And as we do this, I'll read it again so it sinks in one more time. Then I'll tell you what she's written about this. The Karna folk, devoted to the goddess, endure the meaningless austerities of being cut and burned. Why am I so timid on the path of freedom? The first to know is that the Karna folks were a mythological group in India, and they were there as warriors to help support the needs of whatever the gods or goddesses were required. And they would do whatever was required to help support them. And that's what they're talking about in this discussion here. So this verse begins the discussion on refining our attitude toward discomfort. We all need this encouragement. Once we're refrained from escalating the kleshas, once we've refrained from escalating the kleshas, then what? As practitioners, we need some advice on how to remain steady with the edgy energy that often remains. We may not be acting out, we may be interrupting our thoughts, but then we're left to relate sanely with the withdrawal symptoms. The Karna folk endured austerities of cutting and burning to obtain spiritual insights. If they could endure such meaningless austerities, meaningless in the Santideva's opinion, because they don't lead to irreversible liberation, why am I so timid on the path of freedom? Maybe we are hesitant because we're not sure about the payoff. The fruits of the spiritual path is ineffable and usually not immediate. Working patiently with the kleshas can be very uncomfortable. When our self-importance gets punctured, we might know intellectually that it's cause for rejoicing, but at a gut level, it hurts and we don't like it. The only reason we put up with everyday hassles, such as stressful jobs, is the reassuring certainty of a salary or some other reward. Santideva cautions us, however, do not get discouraged by the discomfort of letting go of old habits. He has unmistakable confidence that we can stop being slaves to the kleshas and experience the open, unbiased nature of our mind. He also knows that we have to discover this for ourselves, and that we'll never be able to do it if we give up every time we're challenged. So persevering is the first part of trying to work toward our patience. The next stanza is number 14. Nancy, would you do the next one? 6:14.
There's nothing that does not grow light through habit and familiarity. Putting up with little cares, I'll train myself to bear with great adversity.
So again, there's nothing that does not grow light through habit and familiarity. Putting up with little cares, I'll train myself to bear with great adversity. So Pema writes, having encouraged us to not put off by the pain encountered on the path, Santideva now gives us advice for working with the discomfort skillfully. The first instruction was to reframe the way we view this pain and regard it in a positive light. Now he gives teaching on staying present with even the greatest misery, because it's almost impossible to start training in a time of great adversity. We're instructed to start with little cares. So don't take your big stuff at once, small steps at a time. Being patient with slight irritations and annoyance prepares us to remain calm when challenge increases. Likewise, because becoming familiar with the initial restlessness of impatience and milder forms of anger prepares us to relate wisely when kleshas intensify. When you're taking on a big challenge, it's nice to start with small things that aren't too daunting. Because then when you get yourself ready for handling these smaller things, when the big ones come, maybe you're better prepared for it. And he writes in the next two verses that we're advised not to fret about bourgeois suffering. Of course, in India, bourgeois suffering was different than it is here today. Joe, would you number 15 for us, 6:15?
And do I not already bear with common irritations, bites and stings of snakes and flies, experiences of hunger and thirst, and painful rashes on my skin,
Continue to the next one.
heat and cold, the wind and rain, sickness, prison, beatings? I'll not fret about such things. To do so only aggravates my trouble.
So again, as a reminder, this is talking about how to work with these frets of our bourgeois sufferings. And do I not already bear with common irritations, bites and stings of snakes and flies, experience of hunger and of thirst, and painful rashes on my skin, heat and cold, the wind and rain, sickness, prisons, beatings get a little bit bigger now. I do not fret about such things. To do so only aggravates my troubles. And she writes, Homo sapiens are very good at making matters worse. We've practically perfected it. Santideva is showing us how to change that by practicing the patience rather than practicing fretting. And so patience, again, through this whole thing is what we're driving here with this. And number 16 and number 18 are next. Viva?
There are some whose bravery increases at the sight of their own blood, while some lose all their strength and faint when it's another's blood they see. This results from how the mind is set, steadfastness or cowardice. So I'll scorn all injury and hardships I will disregard.
There are some whose bravery increases at the sight of their own blood, while some lose all their strength and faint when it's another's blood they see. This results from how the mind is set, in steadfastness, or cowardice. And so I'll scorn with all injury, and hardships I will disregard. Mine and most people's first reaction to the world are based on things, our history, our personality, and condition of all kinds. If the sight of blood upsets us, maybe that's something we've had been in our conditioning, we can't really blame the blood. It isn't what happens to us that makes us happy or unhappy. It is how the mind is set, as he talks in this. What makes us suffer is the way we think about what's happening. This is another crucial message. Our story lines aggravate our troubles. Our storylines aggravate our troubles. So the more we think about things, the more we're going to get ourselves wrapped up in this little mess we get into. Number 16. Could you read number 16? 19, excuse me. I'm sorry, 19.
When sorrows fall upon the wise, their minds remain serene and undisturbed. For in their war against defiled emotion, many are the hardships as in every battle. And the next one too?
No, that one for now.
That's so great.
When sorrows fall upon the wise, their mind remains serene and undisturbed. For in their war against defiled emotions, many are the hardships as in every battle. And what Buddhism can do for us, it can be it's sort of an injection that, if we accept it, that helps us to cure our illnesses. And the illness, of course, is our kleshas. We're not deterred by the short-term discomfort of refraining from the kleshas. We know this will heal the long-term suffering they cause. By encouraging ourselves this way, we gradually learn to relax and stay lucid, even in the most sorrowful times. And so getting that quieted mind and being aware with what you're at the moment allowed you to remain serene and undisturbed, as he says in the second stanza of that. Number one is 620. Could you read 620?
It skips to 6:39.
6:30.
Okay, somewhere there should be 620. They maybe stapled these back together wrong.
So 6.
Okay, then I'll have to read it if it's screwed up. All right, I apologize. We're gonna throw a little UPS, not against them for this. Number 620. Apologize, I wish this, I hope you do yours. When it comes back online, you can maybe do your notes again. Thinking scorn of every pain and vanquishing such foe as hatred. Let's start again. Thinking scorn of every pain and vanquishing such foe as hatred. These are exploits of a conquering hero. The rest is slaying what is already dead. So thinking scorn of every pain and vanquishing such foes as hatred. These are exploits of a conquering hero. The rest is slaying what is already dead, or dead already. The greatest heroes and heroines are not those who fight out of hatred, tapped in the bias of right or wrong, but those who patiently face hardships to gain victory over anger, prejudice, and war. So again, it's not the ones who fight hard, it's the ones who patiently face hardships to gain victory over their own anger, prejudice, and war. The point of Santideva's analogy is that no one is more worthy of respect than someone's brave enough to refrain from escalating the kleshas. No one is more worthy of respect than someone brave enough to refrain from escalating the kleshas. And having made the point that awakening requires courage, Santideva will now present a positive outlook on suffering. Okay, so suffering, it's tough. You have to now say, this is what now tells why is suffering good? And my guess is you probably don't have 621 in front of you anywhere.
No.
Nothing until 6:39.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it jumps from
Okay, I'm good.
From 6:19 to 6:39.
Okay, you keep that. You did do your-
It won't help us.
Suffering also has its worth. Though sorrow, pride is driven out, and petty felt for those who wander in samsara. Evil is avoided, goodness seems delightful. So again, this is the positive aspects on suffering. Suffering also has its worth. Through sorrow, pride is driven out, and petty felt for those who wander in samsara. Evil is avoided, goodness seems delightful. Santideva cites 3 benefits of pain. First, it is valuable because through sorrow, pride is driven out. And I don't know about you, but I've had that experience. No matter how arrogant and condescending we've been, great suffering can humble us. Number 2, the second benefit of pain is empathy, the compassion felt for those who wander in samsara. Our personal suffering brings compassion for others in the same situation. And with sadness, we realize that we're all in the same predicament. We're all caught by the kleshas and continue blocking our basic goodness. I was part of an Al-Anon program, which is a 12-step program. And I go in there with people with many, many, many different experiences, lives, etc. And yet, in that moment, because we're all in samsara, there's a connection and a communication that's easy and relatable. The third value of suffering, he says, is that evil is avoided and goodness seems delightful. When we're practicing according to Santideva's instructions, we can get smarter about cause and results. Based on this understanding, we have less inclination to cause harm and more desire to gather virtue and benefit others. Again, this is evil is avoided and goodness seems delightful. This is the eager faith. We're eager to live our lives in ways and dismantle the habits that cause us so much grief. We're eager to increase our compassion, wisdom, and happiness. So these are the three values of suffering. It humbles us. It causes us to feel compassion for others in the same situation. And because we begin to understand the workings of karma, it motivates us to not add our burden of pain when we could, in fact, lighten our load. This ends the section, so the first part of where patience comes from reframing how we regard the vicissitudes of the spiritual path. So now we go into the second part of this, which is the patient comes from seeing the complex reality of any situation. The patience comes from seeing the complex reality of any situation. These instructions can be used on the spot whenever we realize we're hooked. So this is number 622. My guess is they're also, well, I'm gonna have to give them a bad note on Instagram or something. 622. I'm not angry with my bile and other humors. Fertile source of pain and suffering. So why should I resent my fellow creatures, victims too of like conditions? So he's saying, I'm not angry with my bile and my own problems, fertile soil of my pain and suffering. So since I'm not angry about that, why should I resent my fellow creatures, victims too of like conditions? And he uses this little analogy. If a branch drops on our head, we assume it fell from the tree and rub our head, and that's that. We're not going to get mad at the branch or the tree, although I know some people who seem to. But that's another thing, Klesha, they're working on.
Yeah.
But what if someone intentionally threw that branch? Could we cool down our remembering that this person is a victim of habitual patterns, that we're all victims to all like conditions? Victims too of all like conditions. Life is a condition we all live in. Until we start working with our mind, we are ruled by our emotions. They take us over until we no longer are in control. They take us over until we are no longer in control. When we get angry with others, we can remember that just like us, they do what they do for complex reasons, not the least of which is being controlled by their own emotions. For all of us, unpleasant feelings arise uninvited and quickly pull us in. If we don't see it happening, we won't refrain from acting out, and inevitably will cause harm. So again, if we don't see it happening, we won't refrain from acting out and being present, which is trying to be there. So sadly predictable how everyone gets trapped in this. Reflecting on this cultivates understanding rather than resentment for all beings, including ourselves. So if we can reflect on this and cultivate understanding, our resentments will fade. The next set stanzas. For though they are unlooked for, undesired, these ills affect us all the same. And likewise, though unwanted and unsought, defilements nonetheless are quick to come. Never thinking, now I will be angry, people are impulsively caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. So I'll read those two one more time. For though they are unlooked for, undesired, these ills affect us all the same. And likewise, though unwanted and unsought, defilements nonetheless are quick to come. Never thinking, now I will be angry, people are impulsively caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. When causes and conditions come together, we impulsively get caught up and swept away. When we're not mindful, it just takes me away. Patient, Santideva infers, is the antidote. In particular, the patience that comes from having sympathy for the complexity of our current situation. When you look back at Buddha Master's writings, there's a lot he has in there about patience and how you use patience as one of your resources to work through life effectively. So I look through his writings a little bit. There's a lot of there about patience and its importance. And this is part of the reason why. Because patience comes from having sympathy for the complexity of our current situations. If I won't beat myself so hard on when I have patience about what's going on. I won't blame myself all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Next stanza, every injury, whatever, the whole variety of evil deeds is brought about by circumstances. None is independent nor autonomous. Something is arrived at because of something else, because of something else, because of something else.
Mm-hmm.
Every injury, whatever, the whole variety of evil deeds is brought about by circumstances. None is independent nor autonomous. So this stanza presents the same idea as before. This moment is a part of continuum. It doesn't exist in isolation from all that came before. And the next stanza is, conditions once assembled have no thought, that now they will give rise to some result, and that which is engendered does not think that it has been produced by such conditions. So I'll read that again. Conditions once assembled have no thought, that now they will give rise to another result. And this which is engendered does not think that it has produced by such conditions. Our reactions are not as premeditated as we might think. They happen, Santideva says again, because of past conditioning. And he tells a story about a dog that's uncontrollable fear of brooms. When the puppy was born in that household, if he did anything he didn't like, he got hit with a broom. Now he moves on to a much nicer household, a gentle household. When a broom comes out, he's fearful. Everything in his life has changed, but these conditioning and these behaviors are so embedded, a broom will take him away. And she writes, we all have brooms. We may never know what happened in the past to trigger our current responses. But in this very moment, we can work with our mind and develop patience. We don't have to spend a lifetime building up a case about the badness of brooms or the wrongness of our emotions. And so we can reinvent, as long as we're mindful and patient about it. Now there's like 4 things in a row here. We're up to 27. We're not to 27 yet.
39.
39.
Yeah.
Okay, 27 through 30. That which is referred to as the primal substance, that which has been labeled as the self, do not come into being thinking, this is how I will arise. That which is not manifest is not yet there. So what can want to come to be? And permanently drawn toward its object, it can never cease from being. So I'm going to read these again a couple times. Number 27 first. That which is referred to as a primal substance, that which has been labeled as the self, does not come into being thinking, this is how I will arise. And number 28. That which is not manifest is not yet there. So what could want to come to be? And permanently drawn together, its object, it could never cease from being. So, two more. Number 29. Indeed, this self is permanent. If permanent, it's certainly impassable, like space itself. And should it meet with other factors, how should they affect it, since it is unchanging? Indeed, this self, if permanent, is certainly impassable, like space itself. And should it meet with other factors, how could they affect it, since it is unchanging? And the last stanza of this group. If when things occur, it stays unchanged, and as before, what influence has action had on it? They say that this affects the self, but what conditions could there be between them? Again, if when things occur, it stays unchanged as is before, what influence has action had on it? They say that this affects the self, but what condition could there be between them? And so this is a rather important section. This section refutes the two views of non-Buddhist schools, and that's what he's trying to do here. Is there's a lot of different schools in India at this time, and these are the non-Buddhist schools. In Santideva's time, one school believed in a primal self, another in the true self, Atman, with a capital S self. In brief, these were beliefs in an absolute, unchanging principle, similar to the notion of a soul or a God. And that's contrary to what the Buddha is speaking that Santideva does here. Because we long for certainty and something to hold on to, it's very reassuring to believe in some permanent external essence that underlies everything. While we play out our relative dharmas of hope and fear, there's no confusion in this underlying strata, which remains pure, unchanging, and undisturbed. Again, so because we long for certainty of something to hold on to, it's very reassuring to believe such a permanent self. The Buddha, however, refutes such views. Nothing is unchanging or separate. The notion of external permanent essence is what Santideva disproves here. He is not, however, positing a belief in anything else. If we were to say, quotes, all is emptiness, unquotes, Santideva would refute this too. His intention is to pull the rug out from under any fixed view or solidified way of thinking. Instead, he points out toward this indescribable openness of the mind, a mind free from conceptualizations, whatever. I'm gonna put another cough drop in here.
I missed that, the indescribable what of the mind?
Instead, he points us toward the indescribable openness
Thank you.
of mind, a mind free from any conceptualization whatever. What is the day-to-day relevance of these verses? She writes, it's to give up creating more concepts. Give up creating more concepts. Santideva argues that any belief in a fixed or permanent entity doesn't make sense. If it hadn't yet manifest, then it could never come to be. If it already existed and was drawn in a certain direction, it could never cease from being so. In other words, if things were fixed the way we think they are, then nothing could ever change. We're getting close to the 30s.
Forbearance.
Forbearance.
Number 31. All things depend on something else. On this depends the fact that none are independent. Knowing this, we will not be annoyed at objects. That resembles magical appearances. All things then depend on something else. On this depends the fact that none are independent. Knowing this, we will not be annoyed at objects that resemble magical appearances. In the first two lines, Santideva again says that all things are the result of complex causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. In the second two lines, he teaches on emptiness. Nothing is as it appears. We're like dream people getting annoyed at dream objects. Experiencing this even momentarily, we see the absurdity of working ourselves into a frenzy. So, dream people annoyed by dream objects get upset about and get into a frenzy about dreams. Number 32. Resistance, you may say, is out of place, for what will be opposed by whom? The stream of suffering is cut through by patience. There's nothing inappropriate in wanting that. Resistance, you may say, is out of place, for what will be opposed by whom? The stream of suffering is cut through by patience. There's nothing inappropriate in wanting that. Using Santideva's emptiness logic, we might say, if everything is a magical appearance, what point of practicing patience? But Santideva comes back and says, don't buy this argument. Working with patience, he says, will end suffering. There's nothing inappropriate in wanting that. Again, working with patience will end suffering. He drops the philosophy and gets right to the point. We can't use emptiness logic any more than we could use solidification logic to justify continuations of suffering. Number 33. Thus, when enemies or friends are seen to act improperly, be calm and call to mind that everything arises for a condition. Those last two lines are so important. Thus, when enemies or friends are seen to act improperly, be calm and call to mind that everything arises from conditions. He asks us to be calm and again, patience. No matter who behaves improperly, enemies or friends, don't get heated up and opinionated. Be calm and practice patience in that case by reflecting on the fact why they do what they do is not so obvious. It arises from a variety of causes and conditions. This ends the section on the second part of patience. And just read this last sentence over here again. Reflecting on the fact that why they do what they do is not obvious. It arises from a variety of causes and conditions. We are complex minds. And I have no idea what somebody else's mind is like. And whatever their causes and conditions may be, lead them to where they are. And I may be assuming why they got there, and I'm probably totally wrong. So don't assume that. And now he teaches about the patience that comes from developing tolerance, which is a nice segue from that. And number 34, really close now. If things occurred to living beings, following their wishes and intentions, how could sorrow ever come to them? For there is no one who desires to suffer. If things occur to living beings, following their wishes and condition and intentions. How could sorrow ever come to them? For there is no one who desires to suffer. She writes, the Buddha taught that all beings wish to be happy and free from suffering. If this is so, Santideva asked, why do we do such crazy things? As he pointed out before, our desire for comfort is not usually in sync with our methods for achieving it. Our desire for comfort is not usually in sync with our methods for achieving it. In these following few verses, Santideva gives us poignant examples of our insanity. So there's three things. And what number do we go again?
39 is what we're headed
Oh,
for.
that's- you can hear it. Okay, there's three stanzas here about this. Yet carelessly, all unaware, they tear themselves on thorns and briars and add in pursuit of wives and goods. They starve themselves of nourishment. So talking about people who are yet carelessly, all unaware, they tear themselves on thorns and briars and add in pursuit of wives and goods. They starve themselves of nourishment. The next stanza. Some hang themselves or leap into the void, or eat bad food or swallow deadly poison, all by their evil conduct being destructions on themselves. Some hang themselves or leap into the void, or eat bad food or swallow deadly poison, or by the evil conduct bring destructions upon themselves. And the last stanza in this group. For when afflictions seize them, they kill themselves. The selves they love so much. So how do they not be the cause of pain and suffering for others? For when afflictions seize themselves, they kill themselves, the selves they love so much. So how could they not be the cause of pain and suffering for others? She writes, when consumed by passion, we stop eating and sleeping. We may break up marriages or betray our loved ones, oblivious to the pain we cause. We may even lie, steal, or kill ourselves. These are seemingly no limits to how far we'll go to achieve happiness, even when we know this happiness has never lasted in the past. If we're so willing to harm ourselves, it's not hard to understand how we could harm others. Number 38. And when as victims of defilement, beings often cause their own destruction, even if compassion does not rise in us, we can at least refrain from being angry. For when as victims of defilement, beings even cause their own destruction, even if compassion does not rise in us, we can at least refrain from being angry. We have to be honest with ourselves, she says. At this point in our Bodhisattva career, it may be asking too much to have compassion for some unlikely untroublemaker. But we can at least refrain from speaking or acting out of anger. And as probably what I was talking about, there's different levels of bodhisattvas. And don't judge yourself too harshly. We're all early on in the path. And we can at least refrain from speaking or acting out of anger and also hurting ourselves that way. Number 39. If those who are like wanton children are by nature prone to injure others, what point is there to be in being angry? Like resenting fire for its heat. So one more time on that one. If those who are like wanton children are by nature prone to injure others, what point is there in being angry? like resenting fire for its heat. And if their faults are fleeting and contingent, if living beings are by nature wholesome, it's likewise senseless to resent them. As well be angry as the sky for having clouds. And if their faults are fleeting and contingent, if living beings are by nature wholesome, that's critical. Living beings are by nature wholesome. It's likewise senseless to resent them, as well as being angry at the sky for having clouds.
And if you want someone else to read at this point, we caught up with you again.
Good. We'll do number 41 next. So this one, verses 39 and 40 present two alternatives. If we believe that people are basically bad by nature, then why get angry with them? Why not simply accept that they're prone to causing harm and let it go? Getting angry is like resenting fire for its heat. On the other hand, if we believe people are basically good and their faults are fleeting and contingent, then why get upset at their temporary lapses? That would be like getting angry at the sky for having clouds. Remembering this, we can cool down on the spot and avoid unnecessary pain. I like to believe on the people are basically good side, but even if you didn't believe that, there's another reason how you can work with that. My personal experience, she writes, of working with Santideva's instructions is that even if some of them don't work for me, the willingness to simply pause, to take a gap and shift gears always helps. So now we're on number 41, which is back in line with you all. Who's in line for number 41? Want to go across this way? You haven't read yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Number 41.
Although indeed it is the stick that hurts me, I am angry at the one who wields it, striking me. But he is driven and impelled by anger. So it is his wrath I should resent.
Gets deeper and deeper as we go. Although indeed it is the stick that hurts me, I'm angry at the one who wields it, striking me. But he is driven and impelled by anger, so it is his wrath I should resent. This verse says more about developing patience through tolerance. How do we develop the willingness to not retaliate? Santideva's approach is based on developing tenderness for the human condition. And if that's not possible, to at least realize that anger increases our suffering. It's like eating poison seeds and wondering why we got sick. So again, tenderness for the human predicament is something we can maybe relate to. But even if we're not there, at least we can realize anger increases my own suffering. Are we up to number 42?
Yes.
Would somebody read number 42?
I it was who in the past did harm to beings such as these. And so when others do me mischief, it is only just that they should injure me.
And again, I it was who in the past did harm to beings such as these. And so when others do mischief, it is only just that they should injure me. And this is like, consider the law of karma. What goes around comes around. When we ponder the multiple factors coming together to cause an unfortunate event, we should at least consider that one of them is our own deeds. And the complexity of how the next event is going to happen is well beyond anything I can imagine how it got there. And what he's saying is, don't pretend you can understand exactly why this happened if somebody did that. Understanding karma is like like this gives us tremendous freedom to create our own future. The way we relate to being hit on the head with a branch right now affects how we react to being harmed at a later time. So preparing ourselves for future. Number 43.
Their weapons and my body, both are causes of my suffering. They their weapons drew while I held out my body. Who then is more worthy of my anger?
Their weapons and my body, both are causes of my suffering. Though their weapons drew while I held out my body, who then is more worthy of my anger? It's a pretty complex one for me. The words or actions of others can wound us as much as any weapon. The meaning of this verse is that both their words and my reactivity are equally responsible for my pain. Their words and my reactivity are equally responsible for my pain. A remark that provokes me not affects you at all. We all have to work our side of the equation. We can't stop others from saying mean words, but we can work on developing patience. We can work on relaxing with the restlessness of our energy by remaining like a log and not retaliating. Number 4.
This human form is like a running sore. Merely touched, it cannot stand the pain. I'm the one who clings to it with blind attachment. Whom should I resent when pain occurs?
Again, this human form is like a running sore. Merely touched, it cannot stand the pain. I'm the one who clings to it with blind attachment. Whom should I resent when pain occurs? And she simply writes here, my uptightness causes me as much pain as other people's deeds. My uptightness causes me as much pain as other people's deeds. Number 45, excuse me. Would you like to try? Number 45? No, behind.
We who are like senseless children shrink from suffering, but love its causes. We hurt ourselves, our pain is self-inflicted. Why should others be the object of our anger?
Resonates a bit. We who are like senseless children shrink from suffering, but love its causes. We hurt ourselves, our pain is self-inflicted. Why should others be the object of our anger? And she writes, Santideva is speaking in a tender way here. How sad it is that we, like children who don't know any better, continue doing the very things that cause us suffering. Moreover, we love those causes, the addictions, the gossip, the overwork, the feeding of our critical minds. We associate them with comfort, satisfaction, and well-being. Why don't we get angry with ourselves for hurting ourselves rather than blaming others? Or in our Western culture, where we are so prone to self-criticism, it might be to better ask, why don't we have some compassion for our own situation? Okay, the next stanza, number 46. Dina?
Who indeed should I be angry with? This pain is all my own contriving. Likewise, all the janitors of hell and all the groves of razor trees.
Again, who indeed should I be angry with? This pain is my own contriving. Likewise, all the janitors of hell and all the groves of razor trees. There's a lot of history that we don't necessarily relate to the culture of that time, but As has been said before, the hells in which we find ourselves are projections of our own mind. Our pain is the most part self-inflicted. The good news is that once we see this, we might be motivated to free ourselves from our misery-producing ways. Again, the good news is that once we see this, our own created pain, we might be motivated to free ourselves from our own misery-producing ways. Number 47.
Those who harm me come against me, summoned by my evil karma. But they will be the ones who go to hell. And so it is myself who brings their ruin.
Oh, that's.
How about that one, huh?
Guilt.
It's kind of gloating.
Those who harm me come against me, summoned by my evil karma. And we talked a few ways back about a gentleman who came back to life to kill people who had caused him karma, to relieve them from their karma. Those who harm come against me, summoned by my evil karma, but they will be the ones who go to hell. And so it is myself who bring their ruin.
What was that thing you said before about the guy?
So we had a teaching a couple Sundays ago where a person had been murdered. And he got reincarnated, and his goal was to kill them so they could release some of the bad karma they developed by killing him.
He was a Bodhisattva.
He was a Bodhisattva, yeah.
But that's the key. You don't do it in revenge. You do it to free them.
Yeah.
When someone harms us, they create the cause of their own suffering. They do this by strengthening habits that imprison them in a cycle of pain and confusion. It's not that we are irresponsible for someone else does, and certainly not that we should feel guilty. But when they harm us, we unintentionally become the means of their undoing. Had we looked on this with loving kindness, however, we'd be the cause of their gathering virtue. So if I had them change their way, it'd be good for them. What I find helpful in this teaching, she writes, is that what's true for them is also true for me. The way I regard those who hurt me today will affect how I experience the world in the future. The way I regard those who hurt me today will affect how I experience the world in the future. In any encounter, we have a choice. We can strengthen our resentment or our understanding and empathy. We can strengthen our resentment or our understanding and empathy. We can widen the gap between ourselves and others or lessen it.
Can you read that one thing again about with any resentment, you can strengthen it or?
So she writes, I'll read this whole paragraph, okay? She writes, what I find helpful in this teaching is that what's true for them is also true for me. The way I regard those who hurt me today will affect how I experience the world in the future. In any encounter, we have a choice. We can strengthen our resentments or our understanding and empathy. We can widen the gap between ourselves and others, or we can lessen it. So we can widen the gap by keeping resentments, or we can lessen it by having understanding and empathy. And we're back to the beginning. And the next two, 64, 48 and 49.
Because of them and through the exercise of patience, my many sins are cleansed and purified. But they will be the ones who, thanks to me, will have the long drawn agonies of hell. Therefore, I am their tormentor. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. Thus, with what perversity pernicious mind, will you be angry with your enemies?
This is a Bodhisattva mind, I'll tell you. Because of them and through the exercises of patience, my many sins are cleansed and purified. But they will be the ones who, thanks to me, will have the long drawn agonies of hell. Therefore, I am their tormentor. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. Thus, with what perversity, pernicious mind, will you be angry with your enemies? So here's what she writes about this one. The troublemakers in our lives harm themselves, but benefit us by provoking us to practice patience. There's an elected official in the world today who helps me with patience every single day.
Probably a couple of times a day.
We can be grateful to whoever or whatever shows us we're still provocable. Provocable, that means there's something I can work on. In any given situation, whoever justifies getting enraged loses, and whoever uses that same situation to develop tolerance wins. In any given situation, whoever justifies getting enraged loses, and whoever uses the same situation to develop tolerance wins. Personally, I find this logic very helpful. And now we're back to the beginning, number 50. Can you find it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the beginning.
Yes.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Beginning of the.
For if a patient quality of mind is mine, I shall avoid the pains of hell. But though indeed I save myself, what of my foes, what fate's in store for them?
One more time. For if a patient quality of mine is mine, I shall avoid the pains of hell. But though indeed I save myself, what of my foes? What fate is in store for them? Boy, what's that Bodhisattva way that is? At some point, we know we can work with our mind. We listened to the Dharma and pondered it. If someone is continually angry with us, a family member, for example, it occurs to us that we have tools to work with this intelligently and kindly. But what about our parents or siblings? Although we may have a long way to go, they may not have a clue that they're causing themselves unnecessary pain. What's in store for them? They keep strengthening the habit of anger. Remembering this can make us be more compassionate toward them and motivate us to practice patience. As he writes, what's in store for them if they keep strengthening this habit of anger? Remembering this can make us more compassionate toward them and motivate us toward patience. And this is the last stanza, Nancy, number 51.
If I repay them harm for harm, indeed, they'll not be saved thereby, and all my noble actions will be spoiled, austerity of patience brought to nothing.
And it says one more time, if I repay them harm for harm, indeed, they will not be saved today. And all my noble actions will be spoiled. Austerity of patience brought to nothing. This very clearly states the same essential message as before. Retaliation does not help anyone. It doesn't help others, and it definitely doesn't help us. And so that was the section of this portion of number 6. Throughout our 3 teachings, Santideva does his best to undermine our ordinary common sense attitude toward enemies and other irritants. He refutes our knee-jerk reactions to retaliation, making more sense. He refutes our knee-jerk reactions to retaliation and makes more sense. There's another whole section in number 6, which talks about specific situations for practicing patience in individual situations. It's too much to go into today, so I did not include that in this discussion. I do want to say one thing though. There's a very famous quote in The Way of the Bodhisattva, which is in section 5. It says, and it's one I really like, to cover all the earth with sheets of hide, what could such amount of skin be found? But simply wrap some leather around your feet, and it's as if the whole world has been covered. And the point being, I can't save the world, but I can, but one foot at a time, I can save myself and then whoever I'm around with. We can't fix the whole world, but we can fix ourselves and with the people we meet with by fixing ourselves, which is, I love that. And it's one of the most famous quotes out of the again, this is, there's a lot of different books you could find about Way of the Bodhisattva by Santideva. I've seen a couple of them. This one is clearer in my mind for me, so that's one I like. But again, she doesn't talk about wisdom because it's a more complex case. I did read that one from another book. And yeah, this one is, I prefer to talk about this one than wisdom. So that's what I wanted to share today. And we open up for any thoughts or had about what we talked about.
First, thank you, Brian. I appreciate you deeply. We've talked before, so I'm a big fan of the Bodhisattva and Santideva. And as you spoke today to prequel, I think this is very important. But what I love, one of the greater lessons for me about Santideva, that is a walk away, that maybe this will be impactful for you too. They didn't ask Santideva to come and give a talk because they thought that he was the greatest scholar. They didn't ask him because they thought he was wise. They thought they knew who he was and they were gonna be calling somebody out. But what they didn't know was who he truly was and how he was cultivating and walking himself out. And for me, that's the most beautiful part of this. They didn't do this because they thought they had anything to gain from his wisdom. But the least suspected one was the one who brought such beautiful wisdom and then essentially just circumambulated and faded away. And I love that portion. That to me is, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jean.
Well, I just dropped into today's group and I got a tremendous amount out of what you did today. It just, it's just the essence to me of what wisdom is all about, very simply. I love what Pema Chodron too, but disregard that. I mean, it just was a beautiful session to be there. So I appreciate what you did.
It's a great, patience is one of the best, one of my most favorite parts in that book. There's another one that I really liked, which Taming the Mind is starts chapter 5. That's really another part too, but I like this one the best for me. I'm sure there's other parts that are important for other people.
I observed myself thinking that, boy, I have more responsibility in this term than I thought.
That's a good insight.
I feel assured that I'll have so many more opportunities. Yippee!
It really was a wonderful teaching, Brian. Thank you so
Really
much.
good.
You know, it all makes so much sense to me. I hear it, you know, I know this is this is what is best for me and for the world, and it's still very hard for me to do.
It is. Yes.
The nice thing is, it teaches us, start with the little ones.
Yes.
If we can do the little ones, I don't have to worry about the big ones yet. Start with the little ones and work your way around.
You know, I think that might be not a problem. I'm starting with the hardest ones, and I just need to start being more patient with little bitty. That's good advice.
I've heard this teaching down in Florida at a Mahayana group that I could with, and they put it as if someone says something in anger or that triggers something in you. Well, first of all, you have to be aware. That's the main thing of that. And then pause, which is, I guess, that patience that he's talking about. Just pause and try go within and know that the person who said that is also suffering, which was mentioned here too. And if you have to, if you can't get that under control, you can remove yourself from the situation and come back maybe at another time when you can talk more calmly to that person.
Yeah. It doesn't tell us to avoid situations. It just tells us to, if we address them in a calm, patient, thoughtful mind, not in a moment intense mind. Because when I respond in a moment in an intense mind, I almost always am way off base.
Oh, yeah. And you know, sometimes I'm aware, I do that first thing, I'm aware, but I still have that urge to say what I want to say. And it usually is, you know, that aggravates the
That's
situation.
our
And then they
ego.
say something
It's our
back and
ego
then you're in
that
an argument.
darts out.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's not an easy way. Did somebody
Brian,
offer?
hi, Brian. Can I say something? It's Maya.
Rosie?
By the blessings of our friends, our sanghas, the teachers that we know, the teachers that we don't know, and the teachers that we don't yet know. May we take their wisdom, their love, with patience for ourselves and all beings, so that we may walk a little more gently, so that may we walk a little bit more joyful. And may that be spread not just from ourselves and those around us, but one by one to all beings in all realms, so that all may be free.
Thank you, Gina.